Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Was Reborn as a Shinigami, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. It was hard for Tenten to keep her focus when the boy in front of her was shirtless, had a body most would S4, and was swinging a massive hammer like it was a stick. She sighed, for what seemed the 100th time that morning. No matter how much promise he had, Naruto simply couldn't seem to get the stances right. He was simply too much of a free-form fighter, flowing with whatever worked at the moment. Naruto, stop, please just stop. Your form is horrible, you keep stepping out of the stances I show you, and for the love of Kami, don't just swing the hammer around. You have to use it like an extension of yourself. But Tenten, it is an extension of myself. It's connected to my soul. Can't get any more extensive than that. That's not the point and you know it, Naruto. You have to listen to me if you want to do this right. Alright, let's try a different approach. I'm going to stand beside you and perform a kata and I want you to mimic it perfectly. Anything less than perfection and we'll do it again and again until you have it right. Slave driver. You try having Mato guy for a sensei and we'll see whether or not I'm being kind. Now do what I do, or else. Or else what? I don't know yet, but the general idea is you, me, and several pointy things aimed at sensitive parts. Now follow my lead. She stepped into her stance and stood still while he mimicked her. Good. That's a good start. Moving forward, she dipped the sword low and brought it back up in a sweeping, crescent moon motion, and watched out of the corner of her eye as he did the same with the hammer. The object wasn't to teach him how to use a sword, but how to wield the hammer so that it seemed second nature, so that he wasn't so awkward with it. Seeing him stumble out of what would have been a perfect kata at the last second, she sighed. It was going to be a long day. Lunchtime rolled around before they knew it and Naruto decided to treat Tenten to whatever she wanted. Her choice was sushi, at the newest sushi bar in town and the most expensive. Not wanting to look like a cheap date, Naruto went along with it, inwardly cursing his chivalrous nature and the loss of Gama-chan's swollen belly. Tenten was to sushi what Naruto was to ramen. A glutton of the highest caliber and able to destroy wallets in a single stop. Sighing in defeat, Naruto followed the insistent bun-haired girl in, only to be escorted out by the owner, who told him to leave that behemoth of an elephant slayer outside. No problems there, a twist of the shoulder, a flick of the wrist, and a resounding boom and the offending object was in its own little crater, not bothering anyone. Shrugging, he returned to his table, ignoring the owner's gaping. Tenten was thoroughly enjoying herself at the moment. She had good food, good drink, and the company of a very handsome blonde to keep her happy. The looks of jealousy that some of the younger girls in the restaurant kept throwing her was only making her smirk larger and more defined. Neji wouldn't have garnered this type of reaction. He was too quiet and unassuming, even if he was hot. Naruto, on the other hand, commanded attention, from his voice, which was softer than normal thanks to that trick of Sanosuke's, to his wild look, to his gentlemanly treatment of Tenten. Their conversation was what kept her entertained the most, however. She knew that he was a demon container from the time that they rescued Gaara, but she didn't know that the boy was so deep. So tell me, Naruto, what are you going to do with that hammer? I can't imagine you just coming across an enchanted weapon by accident. Well, first it's a holy weapon, not an enchanted one. Second, I'll tell you later, once we leave here. Sigh. You're never going to believe me, Tenten. You're going to think I'm insane. You rushed Neji, a master of the Byakugan, head on and you expect me to think you're not insane. Naruto, there aren't many things you could tell me that would make me think you're off your rocker. Naruto grinned at that statement. If there was one fault to him, good or bad, it was his need and ability to prove people wrong. Wanna bet? X. After a lengthy explanation on his apparent death, his meeting with Kami, the angel Sanosuke who delivered his hammer, and his need to find his soulmate to have kenjutsu lessons, Tenten was, suffice to say, certifiably stunned. This boy was insane, scratch that, he was bat-s loco. Nobody could be expected to believe everything that he said, and yet, Naruto was a contradiction unto himself. Here was a guy who had every reason to hate the world and want to kill everyone, but instead he was one of the happiest, sweetest, nicest people you could ever want to meet. You couldn't help but be uplifted by his spirit, and a smile could only grace your face, no matter how hard you fought. She knew this from experience. She had seen Neji try too often to keep his scowl only to lose it. But Naruto was pushing the boundaries of her patience and her sanity. She'd have accepted the fact that he found the hammer by accident and that it had simply claimed him for its master. That was acceptable. Being told that you were the right hand of Kami on earth was not acceptable. It was blasphemous. Saying that your soulmate would train you in the art of swords to use a hammer was downright ludicrous. But on the other hand, Naruto was a Jinchuriki, a human jailer of the fearsome Kyuubi. Perhaps being Kami's own personal shinobi wasn't so far-fetched after all. Naruto, do you really expect me to believe all that? Really and truly? Sigh, Tenten, I don't expect you to believe anything you don't want to believe. I want you to believe me, as my friend. It's not that far a stretch after all. Shinobi have near-death experiences all the time. I just happened to meet with the Kami. I'm a special case, you know. Look, if you don't believe me, I'll find someone else to teach me Kenjutsu. I don't want to bother you for a cause that seems unworthy. That statement bothered Tenten more than she thought it would. She had an irrational want, no, a need, to show him the way. Naruto walking away from her at this point was another thing that was not acceptable. Wait, let's not be hasty. It's not that I don't believe you, it's just a lot to take in. Give me a chance, please. Please. Naruto sighed and rubbed his temples to relieve the pain of the building headache. He was deep in thought, a feat that used to be impossible, when he thought of the perfect idea. Tell you what, I'll have Sanosuke come again and you can talk to him yourself. Then you'll have to believe me. Back at the training fields, Naruto and Tenten stood awaiting Sanosuke. Well, Tenten stood while Naruto was meditating, a fact that still shook Tenten. Seriously, the guy was just as hyperactive as Lee, and yet he was able to sit still long enough to go into a meditative stance. As if her day couldn't get any weirder, she thought she heard Naruto mumble a goodbye to someone as he stood up. He opened his eyes and she seemed to drown in the blue, the silver stars being the only buoys to keep her from getting lost in the oceanic depths. She came back to reality when he snapped his fingers in front of her face, effectively bringing her out of her self-induced coma. He'll be here shortly. He seems to think a great deal of you for some reason. He does. Well, I hope I don't disappoint him. Trust me, young lady, you don't disappoint. In fact, you exceed my expectations. Both teenagers whipped around to see the brown-haired man with his hands behind his back, smiling at them. I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Now what do you want to know? Remember that all of this is between you, me, and Naruto. Tenten pondered for a while before carefully choosing her question. Are you really an angel? Of course I am. How else could I have bestowed that gift upon Naruto earlier? I didn't see you bestow a gift. All I saw was his eyes change. That could be a very powerful, very suggestive genjutsu. Naruto sighed as she tried to take apart everything Sanosuke said. He decided to nip it in the bud. Tenten, it's not a genjutsu. You're good enough to dispel one if you sensed it. She blushed slightly at the praise but remained steadfast nonetheless. Her analytical mind was going non-stop at the moment. Prove to me that you're an angel. Do something angelic. Sanosuke raised an eyebrow and gave her a skeptical look. Like what, pray tell? I don't know. Part the waters, bring a person back to life, throw your voice, do something. Ninja can do all those things. It won't prove I'm an angel and you know that. Then tell me something only an angel would know. He smiled and leaned over and whispered in her ear. Her eyes got wider and wider and her face redder and redder. From embarrassment or anger Naruto couldn't tell, until she couldn't take it anymore and she slapped Sanosuke hard. Being an angel, however, he didn't budge, just took the blow as it came. He smiled at a very red Tenten and winked at Naruto, who was most definitely not smiling at him. How come every man I meet is a freaking pervert? What did you say to her? Tenten took the moment to give Sanosuke a death glare and then turned her attention to Naruto. Never you mind what he said to me. I believe you okay. He's an angel and you're the right hand of Kami. I believe you. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go home and relieve some anger on the training posts in my backyard. I'll see you here tomorrow at 7. But Tenten, there's still light out. And you can pound the posts here. She wheeled around suddenly, her eyes aflame. I am going home. I am going to take out my frustration on my training posts. I am going to take a shower and then I am going to bed. Good night, Mr. Uzumaki. I shall see you in the morning. And as for you, you tell him what you said, and angel or not, you'll wish that you'd never been born, maid, F it. You'll pay. And then she was gone. Naruto stood like a statue, frozen in place. Man, she's scarier than Sakura when she's pissed. I hope I can get along with her. I'm going to go back to training on that stance she taught me. I'll talk to you later, Sanosuke. And thanks for talking to her. Sanosuke grinned and crossed his arms in front of his chest. You don't want to know what I said to her. Come on, Naruto, show a sense of adventure. Live a little. Thanks, but I'd rather live a lot. I've seen what a pissed off Tenten can do to Lee, and I'm not going to have a kunai anywhere near my dangly parts. So just bugger off. Alright then, but you may want to ask her about that night when she. Naruto stuck his fingers in his ears and shut his eyes. La 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 la, I can't hear you. Tenten was fuming when she got home. The training posts were soon reduced to nothing but sawdust, and a very filthy and aggravated weapons mistress thought a bath would cool her down and help her relax. As soon as her muscles hit the water, the scowl disappeared from her face to be replaced with a slight upwards motion of the lips. She leaned back and just rested her sore bones. I wonder if I was too hasty leaving today. Sure, the angel pissed me off, but that didn't mean I had to take it out on Naruto. I'll need to apologize to him tomorrow. Don't want to become another Sakura, always hitting him and talking down to him for no reason. This thought made her frown. She was nothing like Sakura. Whereas the pink-haired girl stood out in a crowd, Tenten hung back and was unassuming. Compared to some other kunoichi, Tenten was kind of plain. Simple brown hair, simple brown eyes. She looked down at her body and gave herself a once-over. Her body was very lithe, not built for power but for flexibility, the ability to hurl her weapons and use her natural feminine grace to her advantage. She was proud of her body, and though she wasn't as ample as the Hokage, she was no slouch either. She nearly blushed as she thought back to that morning, to when she had went to waken Naruto. Half asleep, he had called her an angel. He thought she was beautiful. Too bad he probably didn't remember it, because he could have capitalized on that comment. She imagined those eyes of his again and that foxy grin. She smiled in spite of herself. She wanted to caress those whisker marks and rub his hair. She snickered at that thought. Something about him just reminded her of a fox kit, cute, pettable, and trusting. The snicker became a laugh. If she rubbed his belly and got him a bowl of ramen, he'd probably follow her around like a little lost puppy. She was beginning to like the idea of hanging out with Naruto more and more each second. It would definitely never be boring. Getting out of the bath, she toweled off and trudged to her room, stopping in front of her mirror and admiring her body in a different light. She wondered for a moment if Naruto liked girls like her and stopped cold. Why in the hell would she care what Uzumaki Naruto thought about her? He was a sweet guy, sure, lunch at the sushi bar had proven that, but he wasn't boyfriend material. Hell, on a good day, he could be just as, if not more than, annoying than Lee and Guy together. With the sunset genjutsu, these thoughts were stopping her from sleeping, she realized. With a growl and a promise to train Naruto into the ground the next day, Tenten rolled over and went to sleep. Hours prior to Tenten's going to sleep, Naruto stood watching her back as she walked away. He never had been so afraid and yet had never been so interested in anyone in his life. Shaking his head, he turned back and grasped his hammer, lifting it into the stance she taught him. Sanosuke stood there, silent, watching and waiting to give an opinion or help him adjust his stance. With Tenten no longer distracting him, however, Naruto was going through the motions with no problem. His hammer sat in front of him on the ground, the palm of his right hand resting on the end of the handle, the left hand held at its side. With a quick tap of the left hand, the hammer spun into the air and was quickly caught by Naruto, who twirled it around like a baton, striking it in a figure-8 motion before driving it headfirst into the ground, standing like he never moved. Sanosuke was more than surprised by this and made his surprise known. Oi! Naruto. When Tenten was here, you were tripping over your own feet and now you've got the move mostly down. Don't tell me you were distracted by her tomboyish charm. Naruto had the good grace to blush, but his words were quite sharp and heated. Shut up, it's not like that. I just calmed myself and remembered what she said, that's all. She's a really good teacher when she's not trying to KU. Scary, yes, but a good teacher. I think I'll look forward to mastering everything she teaches me. He heard a snort come from behind him and turned to glare at Sanosuke, who had a wide grin on his face. You think just because you did it right once that you've got it mastered. Idiot, there's a reason she's known as the weapons mistress of Konoha. That girl is a master of nearly every weapon out there. You, on the other hand, are a clod who has mastered one stance of a kenjutsu style. You don't even know what moves can be used to follow that one up, and I'm not totally convinced that you're doing that wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a fluke. I did that perfectly. No, you didn't. You overextended your knee when you twirled the hammer on the 5th rotation. You could have pulled your arm out of socket as off balance as you were. But the hammer's so light, it's like spinning a baton. It's light because it's an extension of you. I can ask Kami to make it heavier if you're going to be such a smartass. No, that's all right. I'm sorry. I'm just going to continue my training now. You can go now. Tell me, Naruto, what are your plans for the future? Naruto stopped in the middle of what he was doing and put both hands on the end of the handle, resting his chin on his hands. Pondering his words, he thought long and hard before answering. I will do what Kami needs me to do. Then I will live out the rest of my life for me and my soulmate. I have lived in the service of those who don't appreciate me for too long now. I promised Sakura that I would bring Sasuke back, and I intend to do that. An Uzumaki never breaks a promise. But you're the only Uzumaki, Naruto. Then that means that my children will carry my words into the future. It will be a matter of family honor that an Uzumaki never breaks his word. Sanosuke took this moment to give Naruto a pearl of wisdom that he would ponder upon for years to come. Naruto, you've heard the stories about a demon and promises, right? Yeah, so, Naruto, your need to fulfill promises comes from the demon inside of you. It is one of the few noble traits he had. But whereas you will announce a promise and carry it out till the end, the Kyuubi never gave its word unless it could twist it to its advantage. That is why a demon will never promise anything unless it can get something out of it from the person it promised it to. But I never expected anything from Sakura. Yes, you did. Subconsciously you craved her love and attention. You wanted to bring Sasuke back out of the premise that she would love you. You made the promise on the thought that you would get something out of it. That's just the demon's nature in you. Sorry you had to hear it from me, but that's the way it is. If that's true, that I expect to get things for doing things, then what am I supposed to do for Tenten for these lessons? Sanosuke's grin threatened to split his face and he laughed before taunting Naruto and disappearing. Now that, my boy, is part of the riddle. You've got to figure that out on your own. People within a quarter mile of the training grounds felt the impacts as Naruto tore into the ground with his hammer, making craters and swearing the whole time. Angels were so troublesome. Naruto arrived home a bit later than usual due to his training regimen. He had used the cage bunshin method to get that one stance down to an art form. The hammer flowed in his hands and he felt proud of his accomplishment. That is, until he remembered what Sanosuke said about pride in one technique. One technique does not a good ninja make, he thought to himself. Thumping the hammer down hard outside the stairwell, he made his way to his apartment. After fumbling with his keys for a bit, he managed to make it inside. For some reason, instead of feeling good to be home, he felt even more lonely than usual. He couldn't figure it out, but something was bothering him. He suddenly missed the companionship of another person, like a piece of him was missing. Perplexed, he heated some water and got a bowl of cup ramen from the cupboard. Stuffing the noodles into his mouth, he twisted and turned the problem in his head, but still came up with nothing. Perhaps it's another of Sanosuke's tests. He thought back to what Sanosuke had said before he disappeared and made no sense of that either. If a promise was supposed to net him something in return for his help, what was he supposed to give Tenten in return for hers? Growling furiously, he chunked the cup in the trash and stalked off to go to bed. He'd figure it out in the morning. Morning came, and Naruto found himself back at the training grounds, waiting for Tenten to show up. It wasn't rare for him to be the first one to arrive for anything, but he figured with Mato Guy as a sensei that she would have at least got there at the same time. Deciding to put the time he had to good use, he made a few cage bunshin and went to work on the stance. They all moved in synchronization and it made for a very interesting sight. It was like looking at a professional dance troupe except the dances had big-ass hammers. Tenten apparently had a knack for showing up to see things that piqued her interest, because when she arrived she saw not one but 5 Narutos, all with hammers, performing the stance she taught him flawlessly. She watched, entranced, behind a tree. Now Tenten had thought she had seen it all. She's trained with a pompous Hyuga, 2 workaholics with masochistic tendencies, and fought a bunch of super-powered foes. Nothing should surprise her or make her stop in her tracks anymore. And yet, there she was, standing behind a tree like a certain Hyuga girl, watching as 5 Narutos performed the stance she taught in perfect harmony. When they finished, the ground shook from the hammers coming down and 4 disappeared, leaving just the original Naruto, who sat down beside his hammer and leaned against it in a huff. Speaking out loud, he asked the wind. "Man, where the hell is she? I thought at least Guy would have taught her punctuality. Just because she's a girl doesn't mean she can come and go as she pleases." Now Tenten had been admiring him from afar. He was certainly a catch and she was looking forward to lunch again, so that she could get those envious stares from other girls. But he had just insulted her, indirectly, and he wouldn't get away with that. Putting her mediocre genjutsu skills to work, she camouflaged herself and began to slink behind him. It only took a couple of minutes, but she soon stood right behind him, with a kunai drawn, ready to deliver her prank. She began to get worried when he began to sniff the air like an Inuzuka, but then he relaxed and she sprung her trap. Putting her arms around his shoulders and leaning on his back, she dispelled the genjutsu, while holding the kunai against his sensitive area. When she whispered in his ear, it sent shivers down his spine, but he maintained his cool the best he could. "You know, Naruto, you shouldn't talk to yourself when no one's around. Someone might hear what you say and do what I could do right now. Now then, let's see how high-pitched your voice can get." Before she could even move, she found herself hoisted into the air and every one of her limbs splayed out. Turning her head this way and that, she found that both legs and arms were held by Naruto clones. She looked over her stomach and saw the original Naruto spinning her kunai on the end of his finger. "Naruto, let me down. This isn't funny." "You're right, Tenten, it wasn't funny. You threatened to lop off my little buddy and that wasn't funny. Tickling the S out of you as punishment, however, that's going to be funny. You wouldn't dare. Watch me." He poked her in her stomach and she stifled the giggle, but when he began to tickle her all over she lost it and began to writhe and gasp for breath. She hated being powerless against something as trivial as this, but then again she was secretly enjoying herself. She hadn't had this much fun in a long time. Naruto finally stopped his ministrations and let her catch her breath, before helping her to her feet. She tried to glare at him but the smile on her face wouldn't go away. "Okay, asshole, just for that I'm showing you 2 additional stances today and I expect you to be able to do them flawlessly before lunch, which, I might add, you are treating me to yet again. That's not fair. I treated you yesterday. Why don't you pay for yourself? Because you're supposed to be a gentleman and I am a lady." Naruto muttered under his breath that that was debatable and earned himself a knock on the head that sent him face first into the ground. Luckily for Tenten, he didn't catch the grin on her face. "Now then, you're going to pay for my lunch and that's that. Besides, only a few people have ever touched me outside of battle and lived. You should feel honored I haven't gutted you like a fish yet. Now get that overgrown mallet of yours and we'll get started. It's not a mallet, it's a hammer. It's going to be shoved up your ass sideways if you don't do as I say. Now get cracking. Bah, you can't even lift it to go through with that threat. Maybe, but I can shove this katana sideways. Now move. Eep. Yes, ma'am." Unbeknownst to the 2 of them, Sanosuke sat in a tree off to the side, watching them with amusement. He had to resist the urge to chuckle at their antics and felt sorry for Naruto when he saw what the boy was going through at the moment. It was true, Tenten was a slave driver. To be young again and in love, he thought, even if they don't know it yet. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.